Title: The Donut Builders and the Sprinkle Surprise. Once upon a sugary morning, in the land of Sprinkleville, something amazing was happening. Right in the middle of a dreamy pastel field, pink skies and fluffy blue clouds sat a gigantic, delicious donut. It had shiny white icing and was covered with colorful sprinkles that shimmered like candy stars. But this wasn't just any donut, it was under construction. Tiny construction worker figurines were bustling all around it, carrying paint buckets, tiny tools, and even sprinkles bigger than their heads. They weren't ordinary workers either. They were ducks. Not just any ducks. They were the donut builders of Sprinkleville. At the center of all the hustle was Dizzy the duck, the foreduck in charge. Dizzy wore a white hard hat, blue overalls, and had a magnifying glass in his wing. He stood proudly on a tall ladder, peering closely at a sprinkle on the donut's icing. Dizzy quacked seriously. This sprinkle is slightly off-center. We need sparkle perfect placement. Next to him stood Doodle, his cheerful helper. Doodle wore matching overalls and was happily painting a blue swirl on a sprinkle with a tiny brush. Just adding some pizzazz, boss, he chirped. High up in the background, Dabble, the youngest duck of the team, balanced bravely on another ladder, carefully dropping new sprinkles from above, like rainbow raindrops. All around them, the little construction figurines were busy too, rolling in jelly wheels, polishing sugar pebbles, and making sure the donut stayed picture perfect. Then something magical happened. As Dabble placed the final sprinkle, the donut began to sparkle and shimmer like the stars at night. The sprinkles wiggled, giggled, and poof! A swirl of sugary glitter floated into the air. Dizzy gasped through his magnifying glass. The donut is alive! The donut let out a happy hum, glowing with joy. Thank you, little builders, it said in a frosted whisper. You've made me sprinkle-tastic. The ducks all cheered and threw their tiny hard hats in the air. Doodle even painted a heart on the icing. This is the happiest donut ever. And from that day on, whenever kids in Sprinkleville wanted the perfect donut, they whispered a wish into the wind, and the donut builders would arrive with their hats, brushes, and sprinkles, ready to make magic once again. After the Great Sprinkle Project, Dizzy the duck and his donut builder crew were ready for something new. The skies above Sprinkleville had never seen anything quite like it. A giant pink donut, glazed to perfection and sprinkled with rainbow sparkles, was floating high in the sky because it had become a hot air balloon. The donut balloon was powered by a gentle flame puffing out of the hole in the middle, keeping it warm and airborne. The wicker basket hanging below carried none other than Dizzy, Doodle, and Dabble, all bundled in their usual white hard hats and blue overalls. It was a crisp winter day, and the trees below were covered in fluffy white snow. The sky was bright blue, the sun was shining, and the donut builders were flying through the frosty air like sweet-tastic explorers. Woohoo! Shouted Dabble, leaning over the left side of the basket. This is way better than ladders. Dizzy, ever the careful leader, stood on the right side, holding a tiny clipboard and a marshmallow compass. We must stay on course. Sprinkle Mountain is up ahead. Doodle, meanwhile, was just giggling and tossing sprinkles from the basket like snowflakes. Look at them fall, sprinkles snow. As they soared higher, snowflakes danced around them and sparkled on the donut's pink glaze. The balloon let out a happy, sugary whistle as the warm flame puffed again, keeping them afloat. Suddenly, they saw something unusual down below. A group of snow ducks were waving from the snowy treetops. They were made entirely out of snow, but they had little carrot beaks and licorice scarves. Dabble gasped. Are those duck sculptures? Dizzy squinted through his magnifying glass. They need help! One of the snow ducks has lost its jellybean eyes. Without wasting a sprinkle, the donut builders swooped down gently, hovering just above the snow-covered trees. Doodle leaned over with a tiny scoop of chocolate chips from their snack stash and carefully dropped 2 perfect eyes onto the snow duck's face. The snow duck blinked magically and smiled. The other snow ducks cheered, and the donut balloon puffed happily, lifting the crew back into the sky. "Sprinkle rescue mission complete," Dizzy said proudly. As the donut balloon floated off toward the horizon, the ducks waved to their new frosty friends. The winter wind carried their laughter and the scent of warm icing through the clouds. And from that day on, whenever the winter skies above Sprinkleville twinkled with sprinkles and smelled a little bit like donuts, everyone knew the donut balloon crew was flying somewhere magical. High above the snowy tips of Marshmallow Mountains, the donut balloon soared again, pink-glazed, sprinkle-covered, and shining in the sunlight like a sugary moon in the sky. But this time, something was different. Below the balloon floated a wicker basket, swaying gently in the cool mountain breeze. Inside sat Dabble, the youngest and most curious of the donut builders. He wore his trusty blue overalls, a snug white hard hat, and held a shiny red apple in his wing, munching happily while looking down at the breathtaking mountains below. But it wasn't Dabble who stole the spotlight this time. Perched on top of the donut balloon, yes, right on the glaze, stood a tiny yellow building-shaped figure. Its square head looked like a mini warehouse, and it had little arms and feet sticking out of its corners. It wore a white hard hat, just like the ducks, and held a shovel as if it had just finished digging a sprinkle tunnel. The figure blinked and looked right at the viewer, that means you, with a curious expression, as if wondering, "Hey, how did you get down there?" His name was Bricky, part duck, part builder, and part building. He had been a long-lost member of the donut builders, hidden for years in the ancient sprinkle mines beneath Sprinkle Mountain, where the oldest sprinkles in the world were made. Now, Bricky had rejoined the team for their biggest mission yet, the search for the mystical Sprinkle Spark, a legendary sprinkle that could power the donut balloon forever. As the balloon floated higher, the clouds grew fluffier, and the peaks of the mountains started to glow with golden sparkles. "Whoa," Dabble whispered, looking up from his apple. "Bricky, do you see that?" Bricky nodded and pointed with his shovel toward a distant cliff, where a swirl of glowing sprinkles danced like stars. "That's where the Sprinkle Spark sleeps," Bricky declared, "and we've got just enough glaze power to reach it." Below, a tiny watermark shimmered in the corner of the sky, a magical stamp that meant this was an official adventure, recorded by the ancient Sprinkleville storytellers. With the balloon rising and the sparkle drawing near, the donut builders knew their next big journey had just begun. But what they didn't know yet was that something else was watching from behind the clouds. Something salty.